All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get into my personal spending journey. I've had a bank account for quite some time. I've had the same one from growing up, and just with less complexity, right? Just make some money and go buy something, whatever I want. Because as a kid, not always, but typically don't have too many bills, and I didn't have any bills. So yeah. But the thing was, I only had one or two accounts. I had a checking and a savings account, and I didn't really do much with it. I didn't really play around with investing, so I didn't know as much about it. And that was the system that I had been operating on pretty much my entire life up until this past March. Now, in March, things changed. So let's go into how things used to be. All right, y'all. So let's get into my personal spending journey. So this has a lot to do with money psychology. Growing up, didn't have as much disposable income. So whenever I would make some money, either from like cutting grass or raking up some leaves, I would just go spend it because I really, really wanted something. And I did not really understand the concept of saving because why do I need to save? I can go get those Adidas joggers that I wanted, which is something that I actually purchased. And as I have gotten older, consistent challenge for me was figuring out, okay, how on earth do I save? It was like every time I got a bunch of money, it just chips away, 1,000, 900, 500, 100, zero. And I'm back to square zero and I'm broke. And I struggled for a long time trying to figure out how to save. And so I've been doing a lot of research, and that system that I used to have has completely changed. What that system was, getting into topic number 2, was just a checking and a savings account with one financial institution. And they're a pretty big one, and use Redstone Federal Credit Union. And it's really big in the Southeast, given that I'm from Alabama. And that was my bank account. I got money, I put it in my checking account, I moved something over to my savings account. And for a long period of time, that was my setup. Actually, until this past March 2025. And I look back at that now and I'm like, okay, that's pretty goofy. But that is really how a lot of us operate, especially if you haven't had the opportunity to learn as much about finances and how to allocate and disperse your money properly. But I typically only have one checking and one savings account. And for me, there's a couple reasons that was a problem. The biggest one for me is if I ever ran out of money, I would, in my checking account, I would just pull from my savings account. So I effectively could never save. And then 2, because I wasn't investing, I could never really preserve any of that wealth. Most of the time when you have money sitting in a savings account, someone might need your help, or you might have to make a big purchase. And so that money really, you can save it, but in my experience and just the way that my life is set up, it doesn't tend to last long, especially when you have less disposable income. Sometimes, or oftentimes, you end up having to use what you're trying to save to cover a basic life expense. And so that was the real challenge for me, the real question. How do I get to a point where even though I need to live, I can actually save and invest money? And so, most of us, we try to make more money. But getting into topic number 3, my new setup, it's not always about making more money. It's about how you can effectively manage the money that you do have. So that way, when you do make more money, your setup will be even better. So let's go to topic 3, my current setup now. So there's a book that I read. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And it's just all about kind of the struggles and challenges that people who don't grow up learning this much about money go through. Your money psychology, the way you think, maybe money limiting beliefs, maybe the thought that you can't actually save, the idea of investing. And he calls them money scripts in the book. And so you go through that process of like, okay, how do I actually think about money, at a subconscious level that I don't even realize, that I think about. And then he goes through how you can actually set up your accounts. But before you can do that, you have to be able to answer the question, what is wealth to you? He phrased it as, what is your rich life? For me, wealth to me is on a Tuesday, being able to go out on a boat that I own and grill and hang out all day. Or, taking my family out on a trip and nobody's got to worry about anything. Or if somebody needs something, somebody's hurt in a bad situation, then I have the money to get them out of that situation, and it doesn't hurt me as well. It also looks like owning different businesses that are all working together to grow and build wealth. And being able to identify that allows you to set up those accounts. So this is how I set my accounts up now. Instead of just a checking and a savings account at one financial institution, I have a personal spending account with Charles Schwab. They have a really good no ATM fee internationally and no overdraft fee. And the investor checking is a free account. So that's my feel good. I want to go eat out, get a drink, go purchase some entertainment, go to the movies or go to a skating rink, hang out, that type of thing. And then I have a bill checking account. So this is purely everything that I need to survive. This is rent. This is utilities. This is car insurance. This is car note. Anything that you have to pay on a monthly basis. And then you would also add in your subscriptions. So Netflix, Hulu, gym, different things like that. Then I also have another separate account purely for groceries and gas. This is a caveat that I made for myself just to make things easier. And I prefer having this set up at this point. It's pretty nice for me. But that for now, that is 3 separate checking accounts. So I have a personal spending, a bill one, and a gas and grocery card. But you could combine the gas and grocery either with personal spending or your bill spending. But then I move on to my investing account. So now, to answer the big question that I always had of how do I save? Well, you invest. Investing gives you the ability to preserve. As you pay down debt, you get no return from that. But as you grow in your investments, you get compounding returns from that. And so every bit of money that you get, if you put a little bit away of that toward an investment, 100, you get $1,000, $100 off the top goes to an investment account. And now, even when you're broke, that 900 runs down, for a moment in time, you still have that $100 that is growing. And the more you do that, the more your money will grow. And you have to work on making sure that you don't sell that amount of money that you have, regardless of the circumstances. And so that's where your savings accounts come in. Now, oftentimes, as I used to have, people typically have just a checking and a savings account, but you need a separate high yield savings account. Money is tricky. It's funny because, you would think that your money's value stays the same, but it just doesn't. So money sitting in a regular savings account is actually going to lose value as time passes by to inflation. But if you get a high yield savings account, you can keep up in essence with that inflation so that your money stays of the same value. And so now I actually have a separate high yield savings account. I use SoFi. It's a savings account / investing platform, but they have pretty good APYs. And so that's what I use. And now, with everything being said, I have 5 total accounts. So I have a personal spending checking, I have a bill spending checking, I have a gas and groceries checking, I have a high yield savings account, and I have an investment platform. Now, let's go back to our investments because you kind of got to dig a little bit deeper into investments. So from work, you have a 401k or a Roth 401k, but that is not the type of account that is in this investment account. Those are accounts that are specifically controlled by companies. But a Roth IRA is an account that you can control and directly contribute money to whatever basis that you want, typically to a limit of $7,000 annually. Now, in addition to the Roth IRA, you should also open a personal brokerage account. It is subject to taxes if you do sell, but you can always use those funds. In a Roth IRA, you can't use any of the gained value until you hit retirement age. But in a personal brokerage account, you most definitely can. You can actually take out that money and purchase whatever it is that you want to do. Although you would ideally want to be in it for the long run, but it gives you two separate avenues, right? One that's you're guaranteed to get when you hit retirement, but also one that's growing with you that you could use pretty flexibly. And at retirement age, you have two accounts that have both grown to potentially millions of dollars. And then for a third, I have a strategic corporate business account. 80% of the stock market is businesses. Mostly businesses are invested in the stock market. An individual investor doesn't really have, that much influence or sway in the market. And so for somebody that is trying to build a business, that is trying to build equity in that business, having an investment account for your business can save you a lot of headache. So let's say later down on the line, you've been investing consistently. Maybe you can pull some of that investment money out to purchase a property, to put down a down payment. It just overall helps to build the equity of your business. And so with that being said, after allocating my money across these separate accounts, my life completely changed. The process was challenging. So the process was challenging, man, because I was navigating life. I had just moved to a new area, just starting a new job, just recently graduated. So there's a lot going on, trying to get used to post-grad life, getting used to a new area, a new job, just a completely new way of life for me in general. And so between that and trying to actually figure out, I guess, the best system for me, it was pretty challenging. But here's pretty much how I did it. When I went through and I listed all of my expenses, so every single expense I have, right, and then I separated those into bare minimums. So rent, utilities, car note, gas, insurance, and groceries. These are the things that I absolutely have to have. And then I had another list of my subscriptions. So gym, not social media, but entertainment, different things like that. I also use a budgeting app called Rocket Money. And so just different platforms that you can get value from. And then once I knew exactly what I needed each month to cover at a bare minimum, then I looked at my income. I was like, okay, now how much of my income can cover all of this? And once I was able to subtract that amount over the entirety of the month, I had an idea of okay, here is my excess income. If you hear excess income, this is oftentimes what people are talking about. And so I got an idea of what my excess income was. And so once I knew what my excess income was, here came kind of the more challenging part. So this is where you get into conscious spending. So I asked a question earlier of what is wealth to you? So when you can answer that question, you can adequately create the following accounts to make sure you are addressing those goals. So I took my excess income and I put direct deposits for my paycheck to my investment account, my high yield savings account, my bill checking, my personal spending, and my gas and groceries. And so I put the amounts of money that I knew needed to be in my bills at a minimum, and then I split across the other three accounts, HYSA, investing, and personal spending, that was ideal for me. And so this is where things vary person per person. So you might say, hey man, I really want to travel. So you might put a ton of money in your HYSA, but you might not put as much in your personal spending or your investing account. Or you might be like, hey man, I really want to make sure that I can retire at 40. So you're going to dump almost all of it into your HYSA, save less, and then put more in your personal spending. Or you might be someone who's, I'm in the moment. This is me. This is my life. I don't know if I'll even get that old. Let me spend what I can now. You might put most of it into your personal spending account. And that's perfectly fine because your system should be what fits for you. But for me, I went through a period of a couple months trying to actually figure out like what is most important to me, because I think one of the biggest things is competing priorities. There are likely a lot of things that are important to you, but to really get down to what's most important genuinely takes time. And I had to change my system over the course of about 9 months. The first 3 months, my system just kind of felt too tight, like I didn't have what I need, or I was always like missing something. And so I went back, I made some adjustments, I got more detailed in my expenses breakdown, and then it felt better. But then I was like, man, I'm investing like way too much. I have no money to like go hang out, go eat out, or do anything really. And so I did another change, and this one has been, since then, it's been really good where I feel like just enough for personal spending, just enough going to investments, and just enough that I'm saving. And I know that that's a blessing and a privilege to be able to do in the first place, but despite having the money to be able to do that, initially, it felt like I didn't. It wasn't until I got detailed and really looked at all of my expenses and intentionally separated everything that I really saw how much money I'm genuinely working with. The fact is that some of us have more money than we think. We're just not detailed enough to know, okay, here's where I have a few extra dollars, and here's where I can play around. If you're doing any type of eating out, if you're doing any type of going to the movies, buying alcohol, whatever it is that you might do, your vices, you have excess income. And some of that money could be going to investments and savings accounts. So with that being said, I just wanted to come and share that information with you guys. And hopefully it was of value. I do have a Wealthwise Mindset guide. It's a free guide. You can get from the link in my bio where I talk about in detail kind of how to do this on a step-by-step basis. And with that being said, peace out. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this helps you.